Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Aloha.
hello. The joyful moments, seeing everybody. Mudita. Remember, you can take the time to see everyone on the other page. Great. Good to see you. Wow. Well, we're glad to be here with you again, and hope you're well. Hope you had a good enough weekend. Hmm. So notice your body posture, being aware of just sitting. Sometimes that can be an incredibly helpful anchor for our practice when we need to keep things very simple. Just when we notice the attention has been thinking, we become aware of it and we just come back to the sitting posture. Of course, we have this, what the Buddha called this fathom long body. And sometimes when we bring the attention back home to our body, we can do this very, very lightly so that it's really just knowing, simply knowing we're sitting. Very, very lightly checking into the posture and noticing if it feels too tight, too loose. Sometimes it's just a teeny tiny tweak forward or back to feel more centered. Or we might notice the sensations where our sit bones are touching the ground, chair, zafu, bench, bed. The way we begin a sitting can be very relaxed, easeful. So it's a kind of shift into not being as involved with the our visual body. For example, and letting the attention at first, maybe noticing the sensations on our skin, anywhere the attention's called. And notice if the attention can really land, dwell. It's like a dwelling, an abode, home, wherever the attention lands. When we kind of let go of the visual image, there's more of a chance to get a sense of no inside, no outside, just being with whatever appears. And we check to see, are we in a hurry? Do we notice a past memory of that part of the body? The words like a hand or elbow, arm, leg. Or do we take the time to receive just what's appearing? We might remember that our bodies are made of earth, air, fire, and water. That are words, but they can help us dwell in our body like we do with the weather, the clouds, the sun, rain, wind, heat, coolness, pressure, movement, hard, soft. And it's the same as the word arm or hand, earth, soft. We connect with the words to bring us to the just wordless emerging moment to moment body sensations that we don't possess. We can take care of our body, but it isn't mine or I or ours. Just warmth appearing, or just softness. Just like the wind when there's movement or tightness. Sometimes it's helpful to anchor a little more, like with our hands for a while. The movement of our breath. And we can start to tune into the uncertainty of what will happen next. The vulnerability of living in change, moment to moment change. And since it's so many of us look forward to summer, the warmth, the coolness rather than the cold. There can be a great response in the mind or heart of mudita, joy for our bodies in summer, that relaxation and openness of being in the elements, inside, outside. Welcoming we can welcome the movement of the breath. We can welcome the warmth and coolness of temperature. But sometimes it can get so hot in summer. And sometimes we forget, oh, it's simply fire element. It's okay. Just like in winter, simply fire element, cold. And we might notice where I am right now, the water element appear. For me, it's just appearing now, the perspiration. That's just a word, right? But the water element, the streaming of it. And can we make that equanimity space of understanding that the causes and conditions within are just like weather, coming and going. And in this vast body, there's also sounds. And if we, of course, are aware of the visual image of our body, but then we just see if we just receive the sounds directly, like we receive the body sensations, not through the thought process, the sounds, not through the thought process. No inside, no outside. We can come to a deeper stillness of body, heart, mind. There's nothing between us, what we call me, and whatever appears. It's just being, pure being with whatever appears. Textures, vibration. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. No need to possess control, but connecting with, being with. This vastness of being. Thoughts and emotions, part of the weather. Not ours, not mine. So we can be less bothered by the appearance of thinking or difficult emotion. It's just like knowing we're sitting, knowing, hearing, knowing thinking is happening, knowing happiness, sadness is happening, compassion, anger. Grief, equanimity, joy, loneliness. No problem.
Thank you, Michelle. I was always fascinated by Sayadaw U Pandita's um, mosaic mind, heart. His discourses could be exquisite, sophisticated. All the topics that we learn about in our Dhamma practice and practices, how he would talk about them in different ways, in different contexts, and at the end, somehow always still to place them right here, right in our solar plexus or in our gut. He made them into, here in Hawaii, we call it aina based. Aina usually means land, but it also means land, air, and water. And it's a metaphor for experiential learning. If we learn from the land that we cultivate and plant and eat from, and that we stand upon and it rains upon, that elemental ingestion of knowledge, experiential knowledge. That's how I would feel Sayadaw U Pandita would sort of implant the Dhamma-based seeds of wisdom in each of us. Sometimes I'd be equally surprised by the extraordinary simplicity with which he would offer Dhamma. And at one retreat, he spoke about these three attitudes that have stayed with me ever since. He was talking about them as attitudes toward our practice, but they're attitudes that we can cultivate and appreciate towards everything, towards the totality of our life. And these three attitudes are attitude of respect, of heedfulness or care, and the attitude of presence, mindful presence. The example he used the first time I heard him talk about that, and actually it was many years before I saw these three: respect, care, and mindfulness in the texts, in the ancient texts. He applied them just in the way we approach our sitting place, our zafu, our bench, our chair, that how we approach it, how we use it, how we leave it, all has a powerful affect on our bearing of our Dhamma within. Upon viewing the place that we're approaching through the eye door, the visual awareness of it, that right there, the respect is through the eyes and through appreciating where we're about to sit. And he may have spoken or just may have put it together over the years how carefully the Bodhisattva, before he became the Buddha, um, had 7 layers of grass he bought from a young boy who collected uh, thickets of grass. The Bodhisattva had collected 7 of them and carried them to the Bodhi tree, where he carefully placed them and then sat upon them and made the vow to sit there until he understood everything, until he was completely liberated of greed, hatred, delusion, till he was free. So the image is kind of a aina-based, land, air, water, experiential-based, visceral example or metaphor. In our case, it's usually, although when we can and the conditions are good, we'll sit outside. More often than not, we have a sitting place, space, chair, zafu. And to practice that attitude of approaching it with respect from the first time we see it, and then using it, mindfully bending over and bending down and lowering the body and letting the body fit into the sitting space and feeling its support and respecting it in that way, that it's a support, a primary support of the vessel of the body and senses in which we're cultivating, abiding in the present moment and abiding in different layers of knowledge leading up to complete liberation. And over the time that we use, that we sit in a particular posture, in this case it's the sitting posture in our place of cross-legged sitting or sitting on a chair, appreciating that in the same way when the session is over, to arise with the same respect from our place of sitting meditation. And this morphs over into the heedfulness, appamada. If we're not heedful, then very soon the area of sitting might, be messy, a bundled up shawl, and maybe a pen and papers that we use to take notes, but they're kind of spread around. And to look at them, it might seem through the lens of respect and heedfulness that there's not that much care how we leave it when we go from the sitting posture to standing posture and then perhaps walking posture. Whereas if we leave it and brush off the zafu, straighten it up, arrange it in such a way that we're expressing that care, we're aware of its support, and we're respecting that support. And then the expression of that respect and care, appamada, is in how we leave it. Leave something that is inviting to come back to. And of course, the mindfulness oversees all of that. It guides the respect, and um, it accompanies the heedfulness, the carefulness with which we recognize the vehicle of our sitting space. I think the word uh, T, HTI in Burmese, means vehicle, and used to it's used to describe it's a word for umbrella, bridge, slippers, and a place where we sit. They're all vehicles of sorts, and they all deserve our respect and our appamada carefulness and the mindfulness that goes into taking care and respecting, and the mindfulness that's cultivated because of that vehicle, the place where we sit. So I find that all, 30 some years, 40 some years later, I still follow that when I'm in wherever I am sitting, and in particular in a Dhamma hall where there's zafus or benches or chairs that fill the hall, that fill the sacred space in which we all practice. So then it's also radiating respect to keep our own space in care and aware of how we approach it, how we use it, and how we leave it in regard to everyone else in the hall. It invites everyone to have the same quality of attention, respect for what we do, for the Dhamma, for the triple gem, respect in the Buddha, what he did as a human being, the Buddha seed within us all that we grow with every mindful moment, every mindful awareness that arises, and respect for the second jewel of the Dhamma, the teaching itself, which is the ultimate jewel. All the other ones are wrapped inside of this Dhamma of liberation that we take up as a practice, that we discover within ourselves, inspired by the person who, unaided and untaught, rediscovered this truth and this practice alone 2,600 years ago, and then made it possible for it to keep rolling along through the ages, that we all become recipients, we all become heirs of it, to respect these three jewels in that way, the third being the Sangha, without which these teachings would not have been carried down through centuries and centuries of oral tradition, chanting the teachings of liberation. And then finally, in the early centuries, where the writing down of these teachings became texts that can then further be cared for, respected, and brought to the wider world to teach mindfulness and the Eightfold Path, mindfulness and the factors of awakening. To reflect on these at any time, like when we begin our day, we're lying there in bed or sitting on the edge of the bed, or maybe we've already made it to our sitting space, when we reflect on them for some moments on the respect we must have for ourselves and our inner life and those close to us who are influenced by us, to value that emotion of respect. Realize that we respect what we're doing. We respect our body. We respect the heart, mind, the quality of thoughts and emotions that we have. If all of our experience is filtered through respect, we can be pretty confident they'll come out as well as they possibly can, having been washed through that filter of respect. So to feel that to the body and the mind, and to the aina-based experiential nature that is the practicalities that we go through to be able to follow the breath or feel the body within the body, or how to regard experience from a holistic place. One of the reasons the Buddha invites us to know the posture that we're in, to feel the posture from within the posture, is because it immediately aligns us with a sense of wholeness. If we feel the body and are aware of the body from within the body, that's everything. That is the body-mind stream. That is the entire reality of the six senses. That is our universe expressing in the moment and in consecutive moments that where we are aware. So simply having respect to know our posture and sense, feel it, sitting, standing, walking, lying down, it's already inviting that deep regard, deep respect for what we're doing it for, the means of how we're doing it, the body and the senses, and the quality, the tools of loving kindness and compassion, empathetic joy, equanimity, and the guiding principle of mindful presence, knowing what it means, what it feels like to be utterly in the present moment, unconditionally in the present moment with what is. With things just as they are, this moment. There is only this moment. When we cultivate these attitudes, we have a profound respect for how we use this moment, and the appamada, the heedfulness, rather than carelessness or heedlessness, where it grows fuzzy on the edges and where we might lose a sense of the things in our lives that represent being fully present, understanding life as it is, having a profound regard and care for our own and others' lives, and the desire to be present to the fullest of our ability, to uphold our noblest qualities, to want to reach out with a kind word or soft eyes, listening ears, gentle touch. All these qualities that the Sayadaw U Pandita could elaborate with such sophistication and complexity, I find can be folded into these three attitudes of respect, care or heedfulness, and mindful presence. I always appreciated Lady Sayadaw, a colleague of Mahasi Sayadaw's teacher in the 1800s, who spoke about bowing, for example, to the three gems, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, that the quality of bowing is an inward act, entirely an inward act. And the body follows that inward act. The sacredness of it is in the heart. And the motivation for it, the chaitana, the volition for it, is here, now, and in the heart. And the feeling to bow is here. And then from within, the body pays its respect. The ultimate act of respect is to show with our bodies what the Dhamma means to us, what the sacred means to us. And we bow inwardly, and the body follows. And the care and heedfulness expressed also in how we carry the body, in bowing, in rising up from the bowing posture to standing, or kneeling, and then letting that carry on, the appamada, the heedfulness of how we move the body, how we comport ourselves around, and the presence, the mindful presence that is the outer casing of all of that. When the navigators traveled for thousands of years in open ocean, in double hull canoes without any instruments, they carried things that they might need to start life on another island thousands of miles away. So they'd carry young plants and tubers and cuttings and slips wrapped in freshwater soaked moss, and then they might be wrapped with the skin of a banana stalk, and then they're cased in lahala wrappings. Lahala is from the pandanus tree. And then there would be a very tightly woven lahala basket that it might then all be fit into, completely waterproof, and stored under the roof of the hut in between the two holes of the canoe. In a similar way, we encase what we deeply regard and respect and are heedful of within. And the precious sacred nature of mindfulness, we guard them all with that same kind of aina-based land, water, air that will keep them protected. So when the Polynesians finally reached land, they could actually plant things that would grow right away and have food to eat, both along the way and then when they got to where they got to. And that's how they carried on from one island to the next. And from many thousands of years ago, the first known canoes were 1500 BC, the islands north of the New Guinea, the Solomon Island archipelago and the Bank archipelago. Um, they practice within the visual reach for thousands of years before they made a huge leap to the Eastern Pacific, thousands of miles away, like Tonga and Fiji and Samoa. But they gradually built up the provisions to be able to make that journey. And with these attitudes of respect and appamada, carefulness or heedfulness, and mindful presence, we're gathering the tools. We're gathering exactly what we need for our practice in the short term and the long term, for this life, for all of our lives. I'm going to stop there now and see if anyone has any questions. For any of us. You get it?
Kathy?
Kathy?
I
Hi.
um, I had a really difficult experience this morning where something didn't go as I wanted it to. It was like a very minor thing, but it was something that felt really important. And I got in a really bad mood, and I think I feel really badly about it because when I get into these moods, I realize like it just goes out like usually to the people who are closest to me or the person that's closest to me. And I don't know how to stop it. Like I just don't want to keep hurting people, like this person that I care about, but I also feel like I can't really deal with it. And it took me like quite a long time. Like it took me a couple of hours for this feeling. I can feel it, like, just like super intense. And then it just kind of, like very slowly, it like dissipated through like maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 hours. And I was just, yeah, amazed by like how gripped I was by this really, really terrible, like anger and frustration and like helplessness, all at like a very, yeah, very minor thing. So yeah, any tips or advice or, you know.
Steve, do you want to go first or?
Maybe you start. I wasn't
Mhm.
hearing very well.
Okay.
I've just made an adjustment here so I can hear a little better.
Yeah,
So go
great.
ahead.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's really important to remember that it's not what's happening that's so important, that, you know, like the experience you described that set it off, right? That started the kind of difficult mood. And then the difficult mood, it's like, it's very hard to remember when we get kind of set off like that or triggered like that, that it's usually the resistance that's so painful to, right? You know, it's like there's resistance and then acceptance, and it's that it builds, right? It builds from like not getting what we want or things not happening the way we want them to being frustrated, annoyed, angry, and somehow we don't feel like these are worthy experiences, to use the talk today, like to respect, right? To have care with it, that it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be annoyed. I mean, I know that place so well where we minimize the experience that set it off, right? We shouldn't, it's like, what's the expression of making a mountain out of a molehill? You know, that feeling like that people will say, you're making a mountain over a molehill, but it's like, I am making a mountain over a molehill. What do you do with it? But so much of it is, I'm not sure if you noticed yourself disconnecting from that these experiences were actually okay, right? Like that's usually where it starts to build. And then because we're not accepting that we're angry or frustrated or that we got, there's like an obstacle starting out. We don't accept that we're in the bad mood, right? And so that's where I'm talking about resistance. Each time there's this resistance, the Buddha said that was the suffering. It was like that, it's not okay that this is happening. It's not okay that I'm like this. And of course, inevitably, for most people, um, you add somebody close to you into that mix, right? Then there's somebody that's actually you care about, that's seeing you. So it's not only you that's in the bad mood, but somebody else is seeing you in the bad mood. And I think that's where the reassurance of our own goodness breaks down. It's like then there's more reacting. Like I don't know, did you blame the person or? Yeah, that's what I usually do.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But
what
it's
I.
like it's very irrational blaming. Like it's very irrational blaming, and I know that, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just hard to
It's
stop.
yeah, it's so painful. I know. Um, and I think that it does help that when you described it dissipating and dissipating, it is help. I like that expression, upon mature reflection, upon mature reflection, that it just all it all just disappears. It's like, and the blaming just feels ridiculous at that point, right? It's such a painful pattern. I must say, it's one of mine. So I really appreciate that you describe it so well. And I think that the best thing that I can do, honestly, when I hear myself starting that blaming, the best thing for me is to go in another room or in the bathroom or something outside, something, and start I'm an exaggerator, so I'll start exaggerating it to the point where it sounds ridiculous, and that can sometimes wake us up, because it's really waking up that it's totally not that person's fault, right? And it's because we can't accept that we're frustrated and angry, but you go back to it and it's like we can't. It's just that we didn't accept that it happened, and it's such a defense. So I can only tell you that over time, um, I try to exaggerate it to the point of absurdity. So my favorite thing is to blame the cats, right? I'll go out and blame the feral cats, right? And that starts me into getting into a different place, or I'll blame some, political figure. I make it into something much bigger that I can blame. I don't know have you ever tried that? It's really fun. It actually makes it less, you blame the trees and you blame, and it just like you get it out of your system, because it's really just it's like the little part of us, the little young part of us usually takes over. It gets in charge, right? Who's in charge then? Well, it's the little kid that didn't get what we wanted, and we blame. And then we're blaming ourselves, and it's all aversion to unpleasantness. You distill it down to aversion to unpleasantness. But I even noticed the feral cats, because they're all in sort of different places outside. They kind of are used to kind of noticing me come along in that place, and they just look at me like, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's really, I don't know. You can try that. See if you might have some. You're not the same, maybe exact type, but I'm the same type. I'll think if there's anything else. It's an aversion type. It's an aversion type. Yeah.
Did you go to your body, Kathy?
Yes, eventually I landed there a few hours later and I noticed, the hotness and the unpleasant and the just how much energy there was. I really wanted to do some kickboxing videos or something just to
Right.
get it out of my system because there was so much there, so much. Yeah.
I guess I just want to add to it. It's like, it's resistance. It's just the self-blaming. It can be self-blaming or blaming of others. But I think that that's so good that you describe the energy of it. I think that's why my instinct is to tend to go outside and to give it a bigger space, and blame the sky, blame the sun, just blame everything until you can get out of that. It's like a wishful thinking. It's like a little kid's wishful thinking that you can control how things go and that you get what you want. It's an energetic young energy field that then you can kind of bring in caring about yourself. You could play the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want. There's a kick the can, you can kick some stones around. I think there's a way in which it act like a little kid, but exaggerate it and then care about it.
Mm-hmm.
that cuts blaming the person you love, right? Like that's what you try to make an intervention in the neural pathways, right? To like cut that pattern. That's kind of what I believe in.
Mm.
It's okay to be that frustrated person, but to learn to not take it out on other people.
Mm.
I think I was also hearing the pain of a repeating pattern because you seem to have an awareness and a knowledge of what happens.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
frustration is that it's just, it keeps coming up. It's some kind of deep primal triggering that happens that it just takes more patience and more self-care,
Mm.
more expanse to hold it each time. And to understand, well, somewhere there's a deep pain. It just is asking for more care rather than blame.
I think it's we're taking time with you, Kathy, because it's so important because we all have aspects of this that when you can just feel, when you can come in to just feel the pain, it's like so painful. That's why we blame. And it's like to be able to accept that that happens. You know, that's why there's that voice that says, oh, well, this is ridiculous. This, I shouldn't be this upset about this, but actually we are. And it's okay. That's where the breakdown happens. That's where the disconnect happens, because it's like a not accepting that you're having such a strong feeling about it. Yeah. So as Steve said, it, you try to feel the pain and then get some space of metta, but it's all around reassuring yourself that of your goodness and you're okay.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Mark.
Hi, and thank you. It's great to be here. This might be already answered in your answer to Kathy, but it's just come up kind of fresh for me since something that happened yesterday. So I'm wondering, when you want to be, we want to have respect and care and presence, but you find yourself in a situation where you're with a friend and maybe you've been sitting on some stuff, like you've let stuff go by that you might have wanted to clarify with a friend, or you were not happy with in terms of how things were going, and you just sit on it. And then it comes to that situation, like for me today was, I hadn't slept that well the night before, so the filter was a little bit on the low side. And then something again, like Kathy's talking about, something kind of trivial happened as a trigger. And then you decided, like, I'm going to give my friend the truth. And it's this idea that I need to speak my truth in the situation. And it's kind of a little bit dangerous feeling, because you know that there's a rush of feeling. There's quite a lot of feeling that's been bottled up and kind of tamped down. And so I guess I'm almost answering my question by asking it, but there's something tricky around, like, wanting to speak your truth to the friend, but knowing that your filter is a bit down. So of course, the sensible thing to do would be just to take a breath and to, like, think, how can I do this skillfully with respect, care, and presence? But when the filter is down and you're tired and it's just like the trigger, and then somehow it comes out and it is the truth, but it's not skillful. So probably the easy answer is just say, recognize the feeling that it's there, and then just keep your mouth closed, because maybe it's not going to come out the right way. But I'm just wondering if you have almost like an easy thing, like you honor the feeling that you want to tell your truth, but maybe your filter's down, and in that moment it's much harder to collect respect, care, and presence, because the filter is down, so it just bubbles out, and it's almost not vomits out, but it doesn't come out in a skillful way. And sometimes there are consequences for that. So I think I had the situation with a friend yesterday around that. It is a pattern for me as well. So I'm just trying to think, how do I, in those really kind of low filter moments, what's a safeguard to be able to say, honor needing to tell the truth, but somehow guiding that?
You remember that connected with mindfulness are the clear comprehensions, clear comprehension of purpose. What do I want to do? I want to express something to my friend. And clear comprehension of appropriateness, timeliness, adaptation. Is it the right time? Or could I say something, but sort of adapt it in a way that you're opening the door just a little bit, but you feel too charged to go push through all the way at that time. Those are really helpful reflections, and it extends mindfulness into our relational life. What do I want? Or what do I want to do? Is this the right time, the right way? Do I need to make an adjustment? In the heat of the moment, of course, both you and Kathy are saying it just comes out. And we're wired that way. Some parts of ourselves are triggered, and we react before we can feel everything and make a wise decision about what we want to do or not do, say or not say, wait or not wait.
I think it takes a long time to understand how to work with this kind of stuff with other people, that usually I think when we experience an urgency, a kind of urgency to speak something, and we know we're off a bit, not quite on, I'm usually, at least I'm aware that that urgency is a sign. It's a sign that maybe I should wait. Like Steve said, timing, right? But it's timing, and I it's like we all learn the danger of never speaking our truth, and the danger of the ill-timed expression of it. And I think that's part of it. You keep seeing that actually, what does it feel like when someone does that with us? What does it feel like when someone has that urgency and aversion and they express it to us? Usually we're not as open to receiving the information, so it backfires, right? It's like we have this intention to be seen and heard and needing to express something to be heard. And then because of the aversion motivating it, and the wanting to speak the truth, maybe there's this mixed motivation, but that what the person tends to feel is the energy of the anger, and then there's a shutting down to it. So this really depends on the person we're giving this truth to, right? It's an offering of truth, but if it has the aversion, we might have a relationship with someone where there's even an unspoken agreement or enough trust that you can speak this stuff without 100% perfection, and there's enough trust to work it out, right? But still, you know that usually if we approach something like that, it's going to require working it out more, because you're going to get the backlash, right? So it just also, if you're tired, are you up for the backlash, right? Is it just it's going to backfire into having to process even more forgiveness, more breakdown of trust. But I think it really depends also to include in that clear comprehension, include who we're talking to, right? If it's someone that can't handle the slightest bit of aversion, it's not going to go well. Or if you're talking to somebody who has more capacity, you warn them that you're not, it's like a preemptive strike, right? You warn them that you're not going to do it well. At least that sets the stage for the other person, may be a little bit more primed to work with some aversion. This stuff is usually a little messy and not perfect, but it's how we all develop trust, really. Trust in each other, how we work this stuff out. It's a good question. Yeah, we're all on that boat. Yeah, we're all on that boat. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
There's a place on one of the mountains here on the Big Island, on the largest mountain in the world, Mauna Loa. Okay, it's over 13,000 feet high. I'm not sure exactly how much, what exactly it is, but there's a spot up there that they have a kind of white, you can see from a distance, a white dome where there are humans practicing going to Mars. So it's way off. There's just one little road that goes up Mauna Loa part way, but it's like you don't really see it as you drive up. You can only see it from very, very far away. And there was a point in time where sometimes in the newspaper it'll kind of give a little update about how their experiments are going. Sometimes they're up there for a year, right? They're just practicing being in a spaceship going to Mars, right? And they don't go out, or they get spacesuits and go out. But one of the things that struck me was the biggest difficulty in those experiments are people getting along with each other. Like all the other stuff around, food and sleeping and, all the stuff you can imagine could be difficult gets worked out, but the kind of interactions and how to work things out with each other are very, very difficult. And of course you can imagine being on a boat going from, from New Guinea to Samoa would be a similar thing, right? It's like humans, how we work out the interactions that people are bringing up today is really, without the practice, it's hard. Sometimes it might not be expressed outwardly, but these feuds or resentments build up that people never get over. So important questions. Oh no.
Hi, Michelle. It's great to see you again. So I actually just want to remind you about a message I sent you in your chat box right now. So that way I won't waste your time about the message that I'm trying to give to you about Naomi. Do you remember Naomi Weisman?
I remember Naomi for sure. Yeah, I remember her, all her posters that she did. Yeah.
So yeah, so I have been,
Oh,
so she's not feeling well, and I just wanted to ask you to send her prayers and keep her in your heart. And I love you and thank you for being there. And
if you
either
can,
have any questions.
if
Yeah.
you can get, I guess I see your email. If I'd like to have her email, if it's
Okay,
possible. Yeah, I
of course.
remember many years ago. I remember her very well, so I'd like to. Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely will. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Jesse, does that stay up there, or do I need to copy it?
Does what stay up where?
There's an email there of Mona that I could ask for Naomi's email address. Can I? Do I need to
See her
copy
email,
it
but
right?
we have her email in the database. I
Na-
don't. She
Okay, we have
maybe she
Mona's
sent you
email.
it.
Okay, I just need to get Naomi's email.
So what happened, Michelle, is that she herself is pretty debilitated at the moment, but I'm in touch with Ina. So I'm going to find a way for you to get in touch with her.
That would be
Uh,
great.
Yeah, already.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Is Julia got a question?
This is just continuing. Can you hear me? I'm continuing with this week. My son's car broke down in the middle of a highway. He was with my granddaughter, his daughter. He just lost it. He was frightened. He didn't know what to do. He phoned me. He phoned his wife, and he was swearing and and his daughter was there. She's 5 years old. I was so angry with him, and I didn't know how to, because I think what it brought back to me is a father out of control. And how did my son, well, how is he doing the same thing to his daughter as I experienced as a child? And I was appalled, and I don't know how to deal with it. And I mean, this is just, as you said, being on the receiving end of this toxic spew.
Steve, do you want to go first? Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, he asked me to hop in my car. It was a 2-hour drive to go rescue, somehow rescue them. And later on, I did say when he had calmed down, I did say, this seeing an adult that you trust and you love out of control is the most terrifying thing, and did you realize that was what was happening? And he changed. He stopped and heard that. But then it keeps, somehow he's got a bad temper, and it's coming out, and he's turning 40, and all that kind of stuff is going on. I don't know how I can be helpful, because as a mother, it's you want to stay back, but then I want to protect my grandchild from any effects of this.
I have a maybe a story of just empathy that it's not even on the point, but it's on the point of being in the grandmother, great aunt or great parent role versus the mother. And when I first was visiting my middle niece that I was very close to and got to know the kids, and so they're my great nieces and great nephews, and I started to kind of give feedback about how I would be doing things. And I really started getting looks from my niece that I never had in my life. Like, it was almost like you're not going to be invited back if you give any more feedback. And I was just so taken aback at this shift in the roles, right? I was used to being in more the mother than the aunt versus the distant stranger that's lucky they get invited, right? But then I talked to my sister, and she's very funny. She said, "Yeah, I have so many sores on my tongue from biting my tongue every time I visit," and I loved it. It was like, oh, she's like, she just bites her tongue. She doesn't say anything, or you don't get invited. But I do think there is an aspect of that I really, you just acknowledged, and I want to honor it. It's like, it's very touchy, these new roles you get in. And I think you did a really good job with the feedback you gave. And then it's like you kind of, you wait for a time you can maybe talk with your son about what it's like to have a temper, right? Like you just maybe make some times, rather than when it comes into kind of a crisis mode where it's more difficult. But it's also when we're usually more open to hearing feedback sometimes in a crisis. But it's everything everyone's asking is the stuff of life. It's like, how as a parent do you learn not to repeat the speech patterns that happen when you're angry and frustrated. Yeah. It's like that you want your granddaughter to learn something different and to not be around it, but she is around it. And then learning how to help as one, again, the grandparent versus the mother. It's a very careful process of learning when you can speak and not. And you know your son. I don't know your son, but you know him. You'll probably be able to figure a way to have these conversations and slowly maybe be helpful.
Thank you. I'll try.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power, Julia, in that you've been through this. You are in your granddaughter's role growing up,
Yes, that's right.
and so you can speak the truth and the pain and the emancipation from that hurt locker.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, and I don't need to be apologetic about it in that case,
Do
or,
not.
or to tippy-toeing around it. Yes, thank you,
Right.
thank you.
I mean, I think that there's one level to it where, having grown up in that myself, that I used to just remove myself from the situations. You know, I used to, but in the one you just described, it would be hard. Maybe she could have gotten in the car and closed the doors. But if your son starts to see your daughter also showing that it's difficult and that she needs to get away from it, he might change that way too. It's like learning. He might not be realizing in the moment that he's hurting her.
I
And
think he's a very good father. I
yeah,
mean, in
yeah,
most, he's very caring and
yeah.
very loving. But in these temper tantrums, and are increasing. I see that, and I
Yeah.
don't like to see it.
So a lot of compassionate feedback,
Mhm, mhm.
it's that sense of like go out, go far from the car and yell. That's what, you have to, if he needs to release the energy of it, tell her that he's upset, that he needs to yell, put her in the car, go yell, right? There's ways to deal with it.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. It's that wonderful throwing rocks. Teach them to walk away and throw rocks. It's great.
Kick the car.
Not at the car. Hmm. It's a kind of, I just want to say, it's like, if we have the attitude about this is like, oh, anger. Oh, I'm so happy we're talking about it. I'm so happy that we can work with this together, right? Oh boy, I was hoping anger would come up and that I'm seeing this so that we can work with it. Do you see the difference? It's not like some horrible, awful thing. It's more something like the resistance to it is so strong. Your son's resistance to it is so strong. He's going nuts, right? He's got to learn that it's okay to be angry, but remove yourself if you're going to be harmful.
Yes, yes.
It's really actually simple, but it's because we don't go, oh boy, anger, right? Yay, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I can see you're all just jumping for joy about anger. Yeah. Our planet really needs us to deal with this. Fire is anger, and look at the planet. I mean, it's like we all want to love everybody in the planet, but you do it by working with your anger. Oh. Is it Quinn? Up next?
Mhm.
Well, along that line, I want to share that sometimes I get into explosive situations where I get so angry. And I realize that really there's no one to get angry at, because the person I'm angry at is really doesn't understand that. So I gave myself the permission to just go and scream out of the top of my lungs and said, why? And that just diffused my anger, and a few minutes later I feel fine. So that's how I work in my difficult situation. I just allow myself to just be really angry. Not angry at anybody, just angry, and just let it diffuse. That's how I learned to survive.
We're cheering you on, Quinn. That's great. No, really.
Yes.
Look at Steve's smile. Look at Jesse's smile. Look at everybody's smile. It's like that's it. That's feeling that pain and just letting it out without hurting anybody. And caring about yourself enough that you can do it. Yeah. It's like a volcano going off. It's built up pressure. It's built up aversion. And it just very liberating.
Liberating. Yes.
Hmm. Steve, did you hear Quinn yelling?
From here? Yeah, a couple times a day.
Yeah, Steve is in the neighborhood. He's really here.
That would be great. For those of you who don't know, Steve and Quinn live really close to each other, so it would be really fun. Oh, that's great. Linda, we don't see you, but we see a hand. There. Oh, great. Yep. But we can't hear you yet. Yeah.
All right, I think I have it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to thank you, Steve, for the talk. I found it really reinforcing. The Buddha talks so much about noble bhikkhus, for instance, and somehow that kind of care I find really when I attend, for instance, making sure my shawl's folded on the cushion and leaving my sitting place in a calm way, it reinforces my own practice. It's almost like a continuation of the practice.
Right.
And it I think there's something about nobility that has a dignity that helps me really respect the Dharma and the practice that makes me want to keep continuing that. Do you know what?
I do, exactly. Beautifully spoken.
Yeah. So it was a nice reinforcement. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to acknowledge that, yeah,
It's a good, perfect reinforcement.
thank
An
you.
example. Yeah, that's how I feel too.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm. I think I just want to say that it's really the talk on the respect, care, and mindful presence, and then I think that, of course, when we can't do that, when we can't do it, a lot of the questions were about it. When we can't do it, what happens? And it's like it's that bringing the respect and care to when we can't do it, as well as when we can. So I think it's like those kind of perfect day together. Yeah.
Maybe that's good for today.
Have a good week.
Take care.